Well, my name is Austin Williams from the Future Cities Project, but I have actually been invited to speak here on the topic of Malthus and Malthusianism, which is just taking a look at a more broader aspect of this climate change debate about the role of population and the sort of acceptability to argue that people are a problem, whether that's as carbon emitters, carbon excreters, or whether it's just as the numbers of people consuming too much. So I'm taking a look at that issue, which is, I think, fundamental to the climate change debate, from a position of arguing that that's a load of tosh.
I didn't understand a great deal, which is marvelous. I don't know what Malthusian is, and the fact that we consume and excrete is not in itself extraordinary. So if you could clarify those two.
Okay, right. Thomas Malthus, a reverend from 200 odd years ago, did a very straightforward mathematical graph to show that the amount of stuff that people consume was rising at a rate which was, fairly linear, but the population was rising exponentially. So there would be a time when more people meant that there wouldn't be enough stuff for them to kind of eat. There would be terrible catastrophes of poverty, and basically people would die. He saw that as a natural process of not evolution, because that was before its time, but a natural process, full stop. I think that's a load of rubbish. That fundamentally technology, inventiveness, creativity of humanity means that we can make things suit our purposes rather than nature's. So apart from the fact that the role of history in the last 200 years has proved him to be fundamentally wrong, that there are more people on the planet, more people are eating, more people are producing, there's a greater productivity of the planet. Apart from that, I just want to get across today the notion that seeing people as a problem, that the fact that we consume brackets too much is the way that environmentalists argue it, or the fact that there are too many people on the planet who breathe out carbon dioxide, who use machinery which utilizes carbon dioxide. The fact that people see that as a problem, I think, is undermining the notion of our ability to creatively change the future for the better.
Well, it's just that the argument you're using, it seems to me, could be used for GM food, for example, that it's just more efficient, and maybe we're going too far in that regard, in that we disregard the human soul and spirit and health.
The concept too far is one that doesn't register in my lexicon, I'm afraid. I'm all in favour of GM crops, I'm all in favour of nuclear power, I'm all in favour of stuff that I don't even know what they are yet, because that's the nature of the future. We can't really invent it, and we can't really talk about it until it happens. Ultimately, humanity is a creative force. The problem today is that we see ourselves as inherently negative, damaging, detrimental, harmful. These are the words that environmentalists kind of put on us, and I think it's about time we started to stand up for the inherent creativity, progressiveness, civilized standards, and the ability to transform things to our advantage, not necessarily taking nature as our benchmark.
So you have no high regard for Luddites in that movement?
I have no regard for Luddites, wherever they may be found, but more to the point, and it's not even, see, the thing is, it's not even environmentalists. I would argue that there may be a few people coming out of the woodwork today who have a certain problem about population and the numbers of people on the planet. I think 6 million, 7 million, 9 million, more people are better, right? Because the more people on the planet, potentially, not necessarily, but potentially, the more creative solutions we can come up with. And that's something we should put back on the agenda. But unfortunately, it's becoming mainstream that people are a problem.
With regard to the more population, the better. It seems to me that China's adopted a one-child policy because of this. I mean, do you have any response to that?
I'm not in favour of authoritarianism, totalitarianism, wherever it shows its face. But China is kind of relaxing its kind of policy on one-child policy, whereas in Britain, ironically, especially since the fact that Britain has always modelled itself against the terrible authoritarianism of Maoism, is actually via Jonathan Porritt, the Optimum Population Trust, David Attenborough, Prince Charles, they're all in favour of a one-child policy. So irony is probably too loose a word for it, but it's a terrible situation when we've come to this sorry pass. We look back to Indira Gandhi in mid-70s when she had the forced sterilisation policy as something reasonably reprehensible. Obviously, it was even then done in the interest of women's rights, if you believe what you're told by population reductionists. But there's a general kind of certain sense that this was a problem. The problematizing of humanity. Now we see human beings as problems rather than solutions. We see ourselves as harmful and detrimental to the planet rather than kind of positive and creative.